Raise control, raise structures.
We'll go ahead and call this joint meeting to order, I guess. Our city administrator is going to do some introductions of the team. John Walsh.
Well, thank you, Mary. Your phone on the table. Yeah. Well, yeah, today's an exciting day. It's not very often that the planning commission and the city council get together, and this is a good opportunity to celebrate and review just a project that really represents in many ways the future of St. Helens and the city's long-standing work on the waterfront, aspirations for more. So exciting. For me personally, it's been something we've worked on for a long time in the council. So we have a presentation for you to talk about the initial work we did was an extension of the First Street and the Strand Streets. And they come back together and extend through the property of the connecting to Plymouth. And that project has done a lot of really good work with that. It's also the utilities that connect to the water, sewer, storm, things of that nature. The things you don't see, the below the ground things that are, less. It's very important for all the economic development and investment that's going to happen in the property. But it's a good thing. So we've got what we're not talking about today is the Riverwalk project. We did that a while back on the Riverwalk. This is mostly about the street extensions. You'll see some of the bits of the Riverwalk project and the phasing of things tonight, but primary focus is the streets, and there's a lot there. So to introduce the project team, we've got two consultant firms. We have OTAC, which is doing the street design, and then Mayor Reed, which is on the Riverwalk, is also the consultant of landscape architecture. We've got Jeremy Shade and Shannon Sims and Keith Bussman from that. Turn it over to you.
Thanks, John. Mayor, councilors, and commissioners, we just want to say thank you for selecting us for this project in the first place. We really enjoyed working on it. It's been a good combination with the walk. It's been a really good project to work on. Having a good time working with Mohammed and Jenny and John and Sharon and also so just appreciate the opportunity to give us to work on the project to help out some. The next slide here. So this is the alignment, the west alignment that was previously approved back in June of 2021. So if you recall, we had two alignment options. We recommended this alignment for selection, just with regards to some of the development opportunities and everything else with regards to connecting from the street to the existing portion. This alignment is also just obviously in compliance with the urban framework plan. It set out the development of this area, so we're continuing with that. And then is, John had mentioned about it's not really being about the Riverwalk. It's also not really about the development either. Our presentation is primarily focused on the streets and utilities, and where we've advanced from when you last saw it in June to the project where we're at now, the 90% plan set. So this is where the project is currently as far as the design. You notice it's fairly similar to what was approved. The alignment is the same along First Street. There are minor differences, and then there's some more significant changes that we've also undertaken with the project. Kind of moving from south to north to highlight a few things. One, we've reduced the pump station footprint. Two, along First Street, we had previously shown on-street parallel parking along the west side. We changed that to angled parking. That actually helps increase the number of overall parking stalls in the project. We refined the bluff trail alignment. And then continuing farther to the north, one alignment we did have a little bit of a change to was Walton Street. So we shifted the street a bit in order to align better with the stairway coming down off Walton and allow for more fluid connection to the river. One of the impacts with that was we did turn the forward parking along the south side of Walton and make that a parallel off-street parking in order to maximize development opportunities to the south and the north. And also allow for a wider pathway connection to the river. Just to point out a few other items, and we still have this space that's an opportunity for future potential parking structure. And, you know, as we look at different projects, the First and St. Helens intersection will be constructed concurrently with this project. As the project has progressed, the primary focus is centered less so towards the First Street component and more towards the block area. And a large part of that was looking at how we can create kind of more of an urban form that's fairly consistent. How we can make sure that what we do within this area does well to reflect and spread out as we move to the south. So we tended to focus in this area to allow for kind of a little bit more of an enhancement of the existing urban center area, allow for better connection to the river. And then, you know, part of the project was really looking at more of a gateway and Festival Street opportunity. It became more and more apparent that the best option for that was really to utilize what's existing out there with the Columbia View Park, with Strand Street, and with extending Cal Street. So that kind of reflected through some changes to Strand Street that we'll talk about, as well as adding an opportunity for a drop-off area at the end of Calais that gives you better views into the river, particularly if you're a visitor to St. Helens. It provides a good kind of aha moment for a lot of folks. So next slide. We just want to kind of highlight a few of the intersections to help kind of provide a context of what we're currently progressing through. So this is a more standard intersection that we're looking at, how it will kind of shape out. So typically we'll end up with a standard pavement intersection. We're providing curb extensions at the corners. So this is a T intersection. So obviously we don't necessarily have the curb extension on the other side the way that we do on these two corners, but similar for other four-way intersections. The curb extensions help provide both the form for parking, since we have a lot of on-street parking, as well as create pedestrian, shorter pedestrian crossings, and make them more visible to vehicles that are driving through. Consistent with the St. Helens and First intersection, we're providing single ramps at each of the corners. And then I guess some other options or items to highlight with this particular intersection that's pretty good to know. We have the Tualatin, this is Tualatin First, we've got the Tualatin stairs that are coming down and the conversions of the bluff trail as well. So this is a good opportunity for pedestrian connectivity to then run to the east as it connects to the river. And then we have other elements within the intersection. I'll let Shannon talk about those the next slide.
So like Keith was mentioning, that intersection is a kind of important pedestrian confluence because you have the stair connection, the bluff trail, the connection to the future Riverwalk, and then obviously to the rest of the downtown sidewalk network. So there's a few features at that intersection that are special because it's the connection to the bluff trail. You'll see these bollards that you see here on the left. That'll actually be the lighting along the bluff trail, will be that kind of lower bollard style lighting. There are a couple of interpretive panels that will be added in that location, and that will talk about some of the interpretive themes that we've talked about. There's been a large storytelling effort to kind of organize the themes of the Riverwalk, and some of those are being incorporated to the Streets project. So it's going to talk a little bit about the cultural and natural history of the area, particularly so close to the basalt cliffs. Basalt columns themselves will actually be part of the design, so that'll sort of relate to the natural landscape that we're next to. Because it's a confluence of different pedestrian paths, there'll be some pedestrian wayfinding signage, which is what you see here in the center. These particular signs will be attached to existing, or not existing, but light poles that are proposed in the project, and that helps to kind of reduce the amount of clutter out there in the streetscape. And then just some other features to support that trail connection, drinking fountain benches, just a couple of those elements to help support that it's a major pedestrian node.
So moving north, the next intersection we want to highlight is Cowlitz and First Street. What we're looking at with Cowlitz is effectively being more or less a gateway into the river area. This will provide kind of a continuity between where the turnaround viewpoint is, the intersection of Cowlitz and Strand, and the Cowlitz and First, and provide an arrival point for folks. So the differentiation that we have here, just to provide some continuity, is to treat this with concrete as opposed to an asphalt pavement crossing. And the rest of the components of the intersection will be fairly similar to other intersections with curb extensions, beam, and planters. But the main differentiation will be the fact that there'll be some big concrete pavement to help provide continuity with the Cowlitz and Strand intersection. As we work through the project, our original task with Strand Street in this particular area was to look at traffic circulation and see if there were ways to improve it. So when we did that as a team, we explored 3 different circulation options. One was use a 2-way circulation as it stands, change to 1-way northbound, and change to 1-way southbound. And the conclusion of was the 1-way northbound was the best alternative of the 3. And that was for a couple of reasons. One, it provided better safety for pedestrians and vehicles to do the 1-way northbound. It keeps the plaza circulation the same, and also keeps the circulation that is on through it creates less confusion for the revised circulation by doing northbound, 1-way northbound, compared to trying to turn this southbound and make it a do not enter. And then from a pedestrian or from a safety standpoint, one thing that is allowed for by doing 1-way in either the southbound or the northbound direction was it allowed us to expand to have sidewalk on the east side of the street. So that created an ability to make it safer for pedestrians to walk along Strand Street on either side. The main safety point that we found with the existing Strand Street at the plaza is really, as you're probably pretty familiar with, is just the corner of this building. It creates a pretty good obstruction from a sight distance standpoint. So in the existing condition is people are traveling eastbound along the plaza, they basically have 2 different options. One is to continue to the north, or they can continue to the south. And if you're a pedestrian that's in this area, it's really hard to judge what vehicles are going to do and create a safety issue for them. Like you're in this northbound, pedestrians are able to look back to the south and cross over, and it makes it a lot easier for them to understand what vehicles are going to do and be able to predict traffic a lot better. With this change, it gave us some opportunities to look also at just kind of some reconstruction of Strand Street. So right now, Strand Street's fairly undefined, just with the parking that's adjacent to the Columbia View Park. So this allowed us to, narrow up the travelway a little bit, provide more defined parking that had access to pedestrian circulation and facilities. And it also allowed us to do some revised grading along the street. There's actually a fair amount of grade drop between the pinch point, between the City Hall courthouse and the intersection of Cowlitz. So we looked at basically flattening out this area a little bit more to create a little more usable plaza space. That also gave us the ability to provide 4 ADA parking stalls that are actually code compliant. Currently the ones that are out there are not. And then we also added 2 spots south of Cowlitz. Last thing I guess I mentioned on this slide is one-way northbound does also reduce a little bit in the amount of signage, particularly from a stop sign standpoint. You don't have as much of that vehicle control component that you would with if we change this one-way southbound, for instance. We'll go to the next slide.
Okay, so Keith kind of just explained how the vehicular circulation works with the new street project, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how pedestrians move in the new space. So like Keith mentioned, if we kind of start on the upper right near City Hall, this street design creates more pedestrian space. It creates a little bit more space right outside the door of this building. You know, there's a pretty tight corner right here. And then also adds additional sidewalk space on the east side. So where it doesn't exist today in front of the courthouse retaining wall, there would be a place for people to walk outside of traffic. And then of course, the area itself is curbless, and we'll show you an image of what that looks like in a minute, which allows pedestrians to cross a little more freely within that space. The material change there also helps cars who are traveling through that space kind of read it more like a driveway and drive a lot more slowly than they would if they saw it as a typical street. Some other I want to mention, I'm talking about the pedestrian circulation from the street perspective, but of course it's connected to the future Riverwalk and work that we're doing right now and thinking about the playground renovation at Columbia View Park. So you'll see that those projects are kind of indicated here on the map. The stair connections down into the park, the 2 that exist today, will continue to exist in the future. There will be a slight change to the way that an accessible route to the park is shown. So that's what's this arrow coming up from the north. You'll either connect from Strand Street or from this new turnaround and drop off area that we're providing. Will also be an opportunity for people to unload and connect into the park on that side. They'll be able to connect either directly down to the future overlook that'll be part of the phase 1 of the Riverwalk, or they'll be able to connect towards the north past the new playground area and towards the amphitheater. So that would be a non-stair route. That would be an accessible route. And then Keith mentioned before the couple of different places where accessible parking, long-term accessible parking, because I believe the turnaround is more short-term parking, or
Potentially, yeah. It could be either.
So far we've identified the parking spaces right here at Strand Street, and then the 2 on either side of Strand, right by City Hall, and also right by the space. They kind of expanded pedestrian plaza space right there. Also mentioned that the intersection at Cowlitz and Strand is also going to be raised, so that will be a pretty easy space for people who are crossing. And material-wise, it also matches the Cowlitz and First intersection. So those sort of a family of treatments as you come from First and Cowlitz down to Strand and Cowlitz down to the turnaround area. Next slide. So I'm just going to talk about some of the design components of this. I'm going to start first at the north end of this area I just described. We've been calling it the pinch point because we've been looking at it, and these 2 historic buildings that you have and the kind of constrained space that it creates. It's kind of nice. It's a scale that's actually really pedestrian friendly. If you go to the next slide, this is the image of what you all are very familiar with what's there today. So some of the issues we're trying to address the design is that on this corner, it's a very narrow sidewalk and has difficult sight lines. There's a skewed crosswalk today from this corner over towards the courthouse. There's no sidewalk at all on the south side. And then out here, there's kind of a lot of vehicular dominated space and not a really clear connection for pedestrians who are going to the park or going to other places on that, I guess it's the east side of Strand. So if you go to the next slide. This is our conceptual rendering of what that space will be like in the future. So as you can see, there's a lot more space for pedestrians to spill outside of City Hall without being in the traffic way at all. As we kind of narrow that down to one lane, that's visually a lot narrower, so cars will be driving a lot more slowly through that space. There will be bollards there, and also on the ground plane, there will be truncated domes, so anyone with any kind of visual impairment will be able to sense that boundary. There will be sidewalk space on the east side, and then just a lot more space for pedestrians to flow. So if you are walking, say, from Plaza Square towards Columbia View Park, there's just a lot more space for you to make that connection without being in the street. Also, sorry, can you go back for a second? Also mentioned that there's a detail here. There'll be paver banding in that area. The idea of that is that, you know, when we kind of look at this view and you see the architecture of these two great buildings that you have, we wanted to work some of that kind of historic detail into the materials that we're using. So the bollards themselves and the light poles will have that kind of historic feel, and then the paver banding itself will kind of relate back to the stone architecture. Okay. So the next area I'm going to talk about is the Strand Festival Street and how that will function. So we've talked a lot about internally in the design team and with the folks at the city about the ways in which this area can function better for events, because we know you have a lot of events that you put on here at the city, and we want to connect, you know, events that occur in Plaza Square and Columbia View Parks to make sure that this part of Strand really supports that. So what's indicated here at the bottom is some area that we've expanded the pedestrian plaza space. As you can see, there's a row of parking that currently is right at the edge of the top of Columbia View Park that's been reclaimed for space. So we just have the 2 bays of parking on either side of that one northbound lane of Strand. The additional bay of parking is now plaza space. This is space that in the future pop-up tents and vendors for fairs and markets in that space. The street itself can be closed, and so what's highlighted in yellow are 2 traffic arms that I'll show you an image of in a minute. And that's an opportunity, if desired, that this portion of Strand Street can be closed. If this part were closed, Cowlitz would still be open. You could still come down and turn onto Strand, or come down and use the turnaround area. So that allows that function still to exist, even if this part were closed down for a festival. And then there's, you know, opportunity in that additional space for food trucks or any other things. Next slide. So this is just an idea of what that traffic arm is going to look like. So the goal is to get it to be an element that fits in really well with the streetscape. And it has just the ability, it has an arm, essentially a mechanical arm that could be lowered to close the street off or raised up. And when it's in a raised up condition, it'll be sort of just like another one of the streetscape elements that you see. But when it's down, there's also an opportunity to hang street fair banners from it so that you can advertise the events that are happening. And then the last component of the design is the Cowlitz Gateway. We've talked a lot about how the changes to circulation are going to make it so that someone who may be coming into the city of St. Helens, maybe they're coming here for the first time. You know, if they come off of 30 and they come down to First and St. Helens, they may still come down here into Plaza Square, but of course that access towards the river will not be possible, so that will become a one-way street. So really what they're encouraged to do is to come down First Street, kind of past all your main businesses that are here. Cowlitz will be really the first opportunity that a visitor to St. Helens would kind of turn and see the connection to the river. And that's part of the reason that the intersection at First and Cowlitz, at Strand and Cowlitz, and then this turnaround are all kind of this sequence to bring somebody down to the river. And so we've talked a lot about in this turnaround, the opportunity for artwork in the future, some sort of gateway treatment. That's not really being designed as part of the project right now, but it is something that we've thought about, and we've kind of created the placeholder space for that so that can be integrated in the future. There's also just some other downtown streetscape elements that I could talk about, and they're on the next slide. So this will be elements that are just excuse me. Elements that are a little bit more common just to the other intersections that you'll see in downtown. So the bollards, of course, that you'll see at the curbless zone. The seat wall planters are an element that you'll see at many of the corners. We saw them at First and St. Helens, or sorry, First and Tualatin.
I know how it is. I know how it is.
So the stone seat wall planters are at many of the different intersections on those curb extensions that you talked about earlier. And the idea with those is that they have a stone veneer, which kind of relates to this architecture that we're trying to play off of the City Hall building and courthouse building. We'll be planting in those areas. Some of them will have light poles integrated into the corners of them, others won't. And then the other elements, bike racks, trash cans and benches will be scattered throughout just to provide those additional pedestrian amenities. And the goal is that kind of all of these elements hang together and help to kind of convey the character of downtown St. Helens and kind of keeping with kind of the historic nature of it, while also adding something new.
You're welcome.
I'll take the next slide here. At the introductions there, I feel remiss that I didn't give credit to Mohammed and Jenny and Sharon and others that are our staff team that have been just tirelessly working on this project.
Good job.
Some attention, so it's a team effort. And it is certainly due there. It's so in this slide, this is how are we going to build this? There's a stepwise. It's not just a build it and they will come. This thing magically appears and development will fall into place. That probably isn't going to happen. It's probably going to be sequential. So the city is in a place where we're thinking strategically or attempting to think strategically about how this rolls out. And I think most people in the room are aware that we're currently in the process of going out to try to solicit qualifications for a developer, master services developer, somebody that can come in and take a holistic look at the project and step up and have a conversation with the city about how share their vision, see if it aligns with our vision, and basically share in some of the costs of those infrastructure improvements. Not so much the water and sewer underground pieces, but the above ground, particularly on the development side. So you see in blue on the map there, that's what we're proposing as an all public, all ahead full, going to bid project, and we've set that up as the base bid for this. And we've set up three phases. The magenta, their color is the second phase, and the orange is the development phase. So the worst thing, from my perspective, to do would be to put it in and then have to tear things out. We spend a lot of money, but build these things that the development works, we like it, just the driveway's off, the sewer connections off, things are just not quite in the right place. And so we're trying to be good stewards of public resources, trying to plan ahead and bid in that fashion, so we can have a base bid, have the alternative bids to look at, if they're good and they, project lines up and development comes along, that it should all kind of roll out. And that's our thinking. This presentation that we've just gone through right here is just a couple of the intersections. There's a lot. We didn't want to overload you with every little intersection and kind of make it. It's kind of lose when it's too much. But I think we hit the key spots with the central core. The WU Park, this plaza area is just a really nice place, and it's kind of the core of what's going to bring people to the community. That's it.
Can we make comments now?
We're turning it back to you, yes. For discussion, so.
Well, as Doug Morton points out, I have a tendency to look 25 years ahead. And I see this as a disaster. One thing that we had a community come together with architects, and they basically wanted the city's center of activity to move to the veneer plant area. And Old Town we do something with. The place that the city was supposed to live is where right now it's showing to be vacant. Now, a lot of the details you're showing are very nice, but let's take a look at a couple of things that have got to happen. One, we've got to build it, so we've got to get equipment in and out. Our businesses, we need to get trucks to bring supplies in, and yet, while the road's a nice one way, when you get heavy trucks in here to unload, it plugs everything up. And we have a very pretty picture of going around the corner of the courthouse and the city hall. The biggest problem coming out of the plaza is going from the plaza onto First Street. That is really where the traffic screws up. But let's go to the other end. We've got a lagoon over there and a sewer plant. The sewer plant's got to get changed. And that's going to take some time, and it's going to really change that end of the place up. When we do that, we'll have to assume the lagoon and the mill right now are dead. Something's got to be done and that's a 25-year thing. Just to drain the lagoon and clean it, the amount of equipment we're going to have to get in there now affects the connector. And it's going to take 25 years. All of that is connected with this also. Now, each of these things are pretty, but they're not what the people wanted a few years ago. We definitely have to do the sewer line and all of that, but if we're gonna rip out the sewer plant, where does the new sewer plant go? And is this only for 5 years until we have something else? My problem is the overall picture from Route 30 to City Hall has got to be, what is the timeline for each of these things? And we are looking at a 25-year time span. If you say we're going to use Lagoon as the dump place for the Portland Harbor, that's a 10-year after the lagoon is set up so we can load and unload stuff out of barges. That's a 10-year process of just moving stuff, which makes that end of town not really nice to be in where that heavy equipment's going. I'd like to see not a single intersection. I'd like to see what the whole thing is going to look like. Some of the intersections are nice for walking and all, but I can't do business in town if I got to bring my trucks for soda and paper and garbage and all of that stuff, which doesn't seem to be in here. And that, as you know, when we get a garbage truck on any of our streets, it really plugs up our traffic. And when we have garbage and stuff down here with a one-lane road, you put a truck in there while we're unloading, it plugs everything up. So I'm more looking at an overall picture, the other pieces beside pedestrians in this, and that's what I see as a problem. The individual things are great. That's not what I see as the problem. I see the overall picture as the problem. But I see that our community wanted the end of the veneer plant to be the center of the activity in the town, not try to revitalize this whole thing up here.
So I have a question just for clarification, because we don't know where our staff's going all the time, but so on this blue part that we see here, that will include storm, sewer, and power.
It'll also include the First Street, the First and St. Helens intersection as well. There's a very intentional effort here to connect the old with the new so that they have a compatible look and feel. Undergrounding power is something that we're looking closely at, working with PUD to get as much of, I won't say 100% of it's going to be able to get underground economically, but there's certainly a lot of it can to clean up that view and connect the new and the old.
And you get natural gas to lay their lines at the same time the sewer goes down.
We're looking at that. So we've had contact with Northwest Natural.
Because they tend to ignore it sometimes.
Yeah.
They do tend to-
I know they do when the sewer lines are going in.
So that would open up that, I mean, even though we're not developing that, it's still the water, power, sewer, which is most important to development. It's gonna be right within reach across the street.
Yeah.
That's it.
Half the street and the bluff trail, all the blue is,
It's half of it, is half the street, okay.
I wanted to make a comment also, just
because I understand where Counselor Topaz is coming in about the shifting the street to a one-way. That, is obviously a concern. But I think what we're forgetting is that we're adding other intersections. So the flow of downtown is gonna shift. And so trucks and stuff will still be able to access, the businesses, Plymouth, Klondike, by the extra intersections that would be adding.
Well,
So,
you'll have the turnaround too.
yes, so there's still gonna be
It'll
access.
utilized.
Yeah, so it's just a different way that we have to look at the flow of the traffic in this area.
Turnaround to work. I know what you're saying, but
And deliveries, when you start putting stuff on the ground, I'm really gonna vote for putting extra lines in for communication. Both fiber optic and the other communication lines. If you think of 3, put 6 in, because somehow you always fill that up with new types of communication.
I just think trucks are gonna always be an issue in any type of, anywhere you go.
they always are.
Go to Portland in the industrial park and watch, they'll stop sometimes right in the middle and it's like, they put their flashers on and they start unloading stuff.
Yeah.
That's in the industrial Portland where the streets are wider, so I think that's just something that we deal with.
As I'm thinking, Councilor Topaz recalling, you mentioned about what the people agreed on. I think you're referring back to some meetings that happened a number of years ago, and I participated in those same meetings. I think it was nothing that was ever agreed on. Those were have always been conceptual only. And as far as any talk about shifting the center of the city onto the near property, my understanding, and I think if you go back and look at the documents at that time, there was always the concern that whatever was done on the river, on the near property would not detract or take away from what we currently have, but it was supposed to be an organic transitional process, so that we were talking about the entire, the veneer plant property and that property. So I think there's a lot of conceptual things. There have been focus groups, study groups that have talked about things, but I don't think we've ever had anything where we say people have agreed on something, and I don't think we have done that. And so that's just has been my perception from my involvement.
Patrick, the people agreed with the architects, not with the city planning, that's correct. But this is what the public statements were, not action by the city. So, and the city was going to take over the more detailed design of it. And one of the things that the architects also recommended, we have a number of codes and so on that had to be changed if we really wanted to update our city. But what the city has done has definitely not been to go to the veneer property, and they've always used a couple words, conceptual. The other thing that is very obviously different than this is when the architects were here, they had a very large involvement with the river in the water, and we have no involvement with the water. So that's, last time we had a large input of civilian citizen input, because we used to have 4 or 5 meetings at a time, about 50 or so people per meeting with the different architects. But that was a visiting group. That was not part of the official city business. You're right.
I think one of the things that we might think about is what was done with our citizens in a very concrete fashion. And that was to establish goals. And we do have those goals in place. The outcome is sustainable. Whatever we do should be sustainable. That means Ron alluded to that we don't put something in and tear it up. Put in is going to be sustainable. And it's going to be a 3-legged stool as well between commercial, residential, and environmental. The environmental impact with the river, and along with that, residential and commercial. There have a blend of those 3 balanced in some way to where it's sustainable, and it will be made and it will sustain itself. That's the outcome. That's the goal. And I agree with those.
how many peanut stands we're gonna have, what kind of trees we're going to plant, and what kind of businesses are going to be in there. No one knows, and I don't think that that's why we used the word conceptual. It can be a large building, a small building, whatever. But that's where we're at now, as far as I'm concerned, and I really appreciate what the citizens have done, what our consultants have done, what everyone has pitched in to do to obtain those goals, and that's where we're at now, as far as I'm concerned. We're at a place where we had to meet, and I certainly like the idea of having the planning commission here, along with the council. Brilliant idea.
It just occurred to me that every counselor has spoke. and
I was gonna
gotta
say.
say, so
And
let
Audrey.
the planning commission
Yeah.
have an opportunity. Please.
I've got a question for you. Have you provided for laterals for the new streets coming out? For all the utilities?
Yeah, for utilities, we've been providing for future services to be able to connect in.
For the streets that would be put in the future then? Do you know where those streets are?
So you're talking along First? Yeah. So we put in, because the crossings kind of create, that's one thing that's part of the development is
Okay,
this kind of creates a little bit of a grid for how it might build out. So you'll end up with these in the future connecting to the walk. So you're gonna have kind of a decent delineation, at least from a building standpoint. It may be same ownership, but a pathway that kind of creates a division of land and building. So that provided us with some opportunities to provide some services, you know, with some predictability.
so, but you really not, I mean, if someone comes in and decides they've got a different idea and their sewers are in.
Yeah, but we're also not, you know, this orange through here, as John has talked about, being constructed with development, there would be an opportunity for them to go back in and connect with this in the future without having too much an issue. If it was a new street, that would be a problem, but with this being constructed later down the road, it creates some opportunities to come back in and provide utility connections.
There's no finality on those blocks.
At this time.
That's correct.
Yes, it's designed with flexibility. So when we do get that master developer, we'll be able to have a great existing infrastructure and shift few things rather than lose lateral and turn them back. And have someone with a different idea, as you said, yeah.
Developer first.
Well, which leads me to a question I've always had, why you didn't go the direction of a master design and go through it.
That's a good question John can help us with, but I think it's the sequence of phases have to start. We have that crystal ball knowing who's the developer and they come in and with all the, make a lot obviously unknown. Would be great to have someone that come to all that, but we don't have that now. We have to start somewhere and attract a master developer that they see already there's a lot of that infrastructure that has been done from the city side, because nobody would want to assume the entire responsibility financially, right? This is a good faith effort from the city, the citizens. Prepare and show that efforts where in this now come and people will be coming now because they see this. But when it was a plain space, nobody would come as master developer. The risk is too high and the cost as well.
What I'm hearing is the orange is flexible, will be built by the developer or would be built by the city once the developer is guiding out where they want things. As far as roadways or connections or the roadway itself.
I think that's kind of dependent on like.
What the developer offers.
I had a specific question.
Go for it.
And I love the turnaround gateway to the water. But how is somebody driving down First Street gonna know to go there if they're unfamiliar with this town? The intersection is gonna look like the next intersection, is gonna look like the next intersection, which is great, they'll tie together, but well, are they gonna turn left and go down there? How are they gonna do that? How are they gonna know to do that?
signage, wayfinding.
Signage and wayfinding, and also the visual connection. I mean, we just did it actually when we came into town today. I think I've come into St. Helens before not knowing it very well, and I pull in here and then you kind of skip through and they're like, oh, the river is right there. I think by having the circulation go this way, there can be wayfinding signage to the park and to the river, to the river walk eventually. The first in Cowlitz, the Strand and Cowlitz, and then the turnaround are the three that match. The other intersections along, if you were just to travel along First or along Strand, those three are the ones that are distinct and kind of hang together. It's also just it is very compelling as you drive past that intersection. You have that really strong. I mean, the river is just like very prominent when you come to that point. I also don't want to overly focus on visitors. Like you have a great neighborhood connection also that comes down off that hill and has that beautiful view, right? And so that those improvements also kind of line up and help reinforce that for people who live here and who live up.
As you're talking to driving down the street and seeing where you're going, if you were to force the main traffic coming down Old Portland Road to come over to Plymouth Street, so you come across this property and basically use the Old Portland Road, which then changes to St. Helens Street as a secondary entrance. So you would have Columbia Boulevard coming in on one side and the Plymouth forcing that would be better.
I think in the future, you're gonna have both. I mean, people are gonna find their way in on Plymouth.
Well, I'm trying to get them there so they don't have to find their way. That's the way I want to shove them. I'd like to keep them off Old Portland Road from Plymouth on in. I'd like them to go basically straight downtown, Portland Road, Old Plymouth, turn the corner and they're here. Because coming down that hill, you would get a fantastic view of the river.
And some of that is already incorporated in
That's
our,
right.
in our master planning, streetscape plan. So, yeah,
A lot of businesses who want people to come down from Bolton and down town, and I mean, that way, it'd be unfortunate if everybody was forced to tunnel down
Right.
Old Portland Road. The standout for me is I love the concept. I guess I've never seen it as one or the other, the city shifting to the old veneer site and the old stuff or the old plan. I mean, as anybody that knows me know that I think the River District is historical asset, gem of the town, and I'm hoping that this project turns it into being seamless, that the developers come in and they look at the Secretary of Interior's guidelines of what the architecture should look like, so it looks like it all belongs. So there's no trending like, oh, looks like they built it in 2025 because they followed some kind of trend. Well, if they follow the Secretary of Interior's guidelines architecturally, it can look really seamless, and then, you certainly don't want to forget about.
And First Street, and we've kept that in mind with lighting. It's been talked about. John, if you want to speak a little bit on it, I don't know if you know where I'm going with the First Street already.
Yeah, just integrating the old and the new, the things you can, the landscaping, the streets, the street furniture, the signposts and plants, all of those things. It is older, so it's going to be a challenge to get that right, find that balance, but.
There's been a lot of talk with the business community, the overall business community, to integrate Holton with our downtown area. And I think you make a really valid point by not forgetting about Columbia Boulevard as a main entryway to showcase our businesses that are in uptown Holton, and the beautiful drive down. I mean, what a great view you have of the mountains and going down Spain's Hill. Yeah, it's a beautiful drive. No one can argue with that.
All the historic houses in there. I like to drive by those. So.
Well, I'm investing heavily in the whole district. Really, but not gonna be pretty.
We're bypassing it, Russ.
Yeah. No,
Short of mileage on your car.
I've never been a fan of coming in the other way, and I I understand the industrial and everything that's done, but it's coming into town, if someone hasn't been here, that's that'll do a lot just by driving in there.
Yeah.
City.
After that went through the planning commission on the turnaround to be no parking, what did the city council do?
Nothing.
We have, this is the first we've seen it,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, we were talking about no parking on the turnaround. Yeah, it's not gonna be it's just to offload handicap is what we, yes.
Yeah, we haven't.
I am amazed at this right here. I had Kathy go back to the pictures. And I wanna say what, look at that. I mean, curbless, you go through bollards. I just, wow, what a big, huge difference that be right there.
See a lot of people hitting those things.
About the bollards too, just, let's say what is closed off and it's an event, the bollards are kind of in the middle of everything. Because it's just all pedestrian space.
Nice, because if you ever go around that corner, people are always
You're in it.
on the right-hand side trying to walk over there, not around the
Yes.
city building.
Wait till we get a snowstorm and try to plow that.
And I just want the sidewalk in front of the restroom is much closer to the park, and they're gonna pull that sidewalk all the way out, almost beyond the restrooms. That whole area is gonna
Yes,
be space. I mean, it's much bigger than this is making it look.
Yeah.
In front of the restrooms is pretty wide.
Yeah, just kind of off the screen, there's quite a lot of expansion there. And that'll be probably when you have events in that space, that will be more of that open space that's set up. This is probably still, you know, the space that's created here is a lot more space for pedestrians to move and to function and then also to permit traffic to travel at the same time. But there's not so much space here that you're really gonna focus your events like in this zone. They're gonna be more kind of right at the top of where the, you know, look where you're looking down into the park and where that third row parking is
The
today.
bigger plan view, which make the bollard area much smaller
Yeah,
in scale. This looks like it's dominating the whole scene.
yeah, this is kind of focused right on that.
Food cart's gonna be off to the right there.
Yeah.
Six of them.
That's where they're dedicated to.
Fairly, look to be fairly wide.
It could be up on that plaza area, off to the right over here,
But they-
or it
the
could be,
first-
close off the street.
Okay, I think I heard at one time in the planning commission that the possibility they could be around the turnaround.
Goes in rather than
I think that's a bad idea.
somebody.
I hadn't heard that.
That's gonna be your view turnaround.
The sidewalk.
Should be lined with food carts. So that's dedicated up there for food carts. I think that makes sense.
It's gonna be so, you know, flat that I couldn't see what else we could use it for, you know, besides the food carts and festival type stuff. Because it's just gonna be a concrete mainly, right?
In concrete, it's fairly flat as we are in this area. You get a little bit farther to the south. It starts to zoom up just to the grade, but
Yeah, if you go ahead one slide.
There you go.
I mean, it's kind of what we do already for 13 nights, you
Yeah,
know,
it's-
so.
Well, there was comment about putting it around there,
Flat.
and I don't think that would be as fun.
Aren't you talking about having them there every day?
Oh, even during events, they should be one lone locale where they
Yeah.
wouldn't pull them around there because obviously that's your view, and if you people are coming
Right.
down there.
I agree with you.
Food carts.
Yeah.
I agree with you, but I
And
thought you were
you're pulling
talking.
them in, so the utilities are there, you're running across cords across the plaza all the time. So if there's dedicated utilities and everything, that's where they go,
Right,
can be rented out to them. And also knowing this weather, may be a consideration for a sort of an open roof structure above that area. I don't know.
Not a bad idea. That's- Bad idea.
I like the way you think.
It's only money. I like the way you think.
That was the thing, go back to your picture with the baller.
Saying we had to stand.
Wrong direction. Okay, the one ugly thing in there is that restroom. It sticks out like, well, I won't go. If you were to sink that so you would enter it from the level of the park itself, so it's underground there. It's still in the location. I have a lot more space and I get rid of ugly.
Paid for.
Or move that restroom some other place in that area.
I mean,
Like, come on.
Yeah, we're-
It's safety with kids, I like it.
We all want new stuff.
That's the other.
We're gonna get blinders for you, Steve.
That is an area, I mean, I've thought a lot about kind of the view as you're walking from Plaza Square towards it. You see that side of that restroom is one of the first things kind of right before you see the river, right? And so what we're doing in this design, obviously with all the changes to pavement, adding bollards, but there's a little bit of planting area that'll be in front of that. You're seeing a couple benches in that sketch. It provides some space. There'll still be, I think there's a little maintenance access that needs to get around that building, so that'll still be there. But that's a great spot for probably a art sign or, you know, something, or a mural or something, you know, something that really kind of advertises the space that's just beyond, because it's
Sure.
you don't see very easily. So that's not part of our design, but I think it's a really good opportunity that that face that presents, you know, it is kind of the perfect spot for just like thing on kind of thing, you know, that's that.
Put Main Street on that.
Yeah.
Face it with, asphalt,
Great line.
that's like the courthouse or something.
The nice thing is that in that restroom, there's a center section that has power and other things that you can supply the area. It gives you a utility hall.
Yeah, and there's, you know, to the south of here, there's, as you're going kind of by, where there's existing access down to the river, there's actually power and telecom that crosses through that area as well. So there's some opportunities to go power up on that side.
From your topical view, I did not see a crosswalk from City Hall over to the courthouse. And going along with our ordinances about pedestrians being in crosswalks, is there one?
But there was.
Now there is, it's his picture.
Now that a crosswalk.
Back to the one with the red arrow.
sidewalk, I think that would be essential.
So there's not a dedicated crossing. This is a ramp area, so we don't have anything that's striped out from a crosswalk standpoint. All of this area between the ramp on either side is flush with grade and allows for pedestrians to cross. We do have truncated domes for pedestrians, so that they know that they're crossing. We look at options for that. But to do that kind of pushed us further out into the street or created something a little bit more awkward. And one of the things we figured is this really is the pedestrian way.
I think cars would look at that and go, can I really drive?
Yeah.
How wide is it? We're
It's
just,
narrow.
We ended up with 16 to 18 feet.
It's wide.
that's a lot of room.
Yeah, it's
Wider than it looks on
I
that.
was gonna say at least 14, I knew it was at least that, I think. It's a little wide.
Travel lane is 12 feet and this one is bigger.
Yeah.
So why the bollards? They're to protect the pedestrians from the vehicles, right? Is that the point?
Yeah, and it helps give a visual, something vertical helps give a
Safe.
visual indicator to both, to someone who's, you know, then and to a.
Because with this much of a raised area, vehicles are likely to try and veer off. So,
Channelizes them.
How often are you gonna have interpretive signage for history of the Riverwalk area?
And so in the streets project, we've identified a couple locations. I showed you that one that was down by First and Tualatin. I think there's actually two that will be in that intersection, that vicinity, one more further down the Bluff Trail. And then there are many more locations that are planned as part of the Riverwalk project. So as part of that work, we've done an interpretive framework plan where we've thought about kind of the stories that we're trying to tell and where they occur around the site. Yeah, I think maybe 3 as part of the streets project.
Artwork as well, sculptures,
Oh,
three-dimensional sculptures,
time.
no plans.
no plans for art, as Shannon had talked about, there is a potential for artwork in this center area.
And the 2 little,
And then-
yeah.
Yeah, these two.
So we've talked about where opportunities are, but it's not being implemented.
The artwork in the center of that circle is a way to get people killed going off the sidewalk to go out and see the art as cars go around it.
Well, I hope we're not going very fast.
That means they don't give very many stickers. But, you know, people are nosy, and if you've got two-dimensional art out there, people are gonna walk out there to look at it.
Well, they got the Lewis and Clark statue in the middle of the turnaround at Broadway and Seaside.
Yeah.
Go there all the time. And they're going very slowly around that corner, so.
I think one of the things that we might hear some pushback from the community about is that we're eliminating some parking in that area. And for people trying to use, you know, City Hall, coming in for permits, going to the courthouse. I realize that we have some changes on the way, so some of that may be shifting a little bit over time, but that is still a concern, I think, when the community sees this, they're gonna say, we're losing a whole row of parking, one, that's currently there. And so we wanna have a good way to answer that.
So I do know just down the way, if we can go a few slides back, maybe.
To the left, that's what you're thinking.
No, yeah, yes, it's to, you come in and take a right. Salisbury's house, where if you're familiar with Bob's, there's actually an alleyway there that we've created a bunch of parking at.
Like on the wrong.
Keep going. Right there. Yeah, I mean, the other one was even better, the one back. Yeah, right there. So, be. You want me to come up? You wanna show them? Yeah.
Right here.
Yep.
That's a new street.
Yep.
Being created with the development.
And that will be at the same time as the one-way change.
And we also have the additional gray area for parking up there as well.
But will that happen at the same time as the change with the one-way is what you see what I'm saying? Is there gonna be a lapse in?
No, there'll be a
parking?
little lapse, but
Okay.
yeah, but we can always just extend the middle parking right here, gravel. Throw down some more boulders.
Just thinking of things that were here.
If I would call and ask that question,
Fashion.
obviously, you're parking, why are you doing it? I would say, well, the parking that we're providing currently doesn't meet standards. For drive aisles, it's dangerous when you have people backing up and pedestrians walking in the park. I mean, it's a dangerous situation. And so we're making it safer. And we're providing as much parking as we can within the parameters of a safe, drive aisle and parking standard area. I mean, we're doing the best we can and provide, that would be my answer.
Well, and eventually down the line, there will be more parking down there, but it's gonna be stages, so.
Is there any chance of putting a second
level.
parking?
From the theater,
Between the old school and
yeah, across from the theater and the city-owned lot.
is there any chance of putting raised parking in there to get more?
So, John, he's ready.
Talked about that over there.
Yeah,
Dreaming of parking.
got it.
Would be a good spot.
And don't forget bicycle. It's like Amsterdam, right?
Well, I've read the booklet on the plan, the Riverwalk plan and the riverfront, and I think this is a consistent vision with the city. And, I think it is important that we get started and keep moving. I think that Councilor Topaz's concerns definitely needs to address. How are we gonna move the traffic and how are we gonna move the garbage trucks around? Let's make sure we have enough room for everybody, the business needs as well as the pedestrian needs. And one of the things that somebody who lives down here or near here, I kind of think, where are the people gonna come from? And so we have events where people come here, but we have a lot more room for people to live down here and use this as a place to live and bring families down here. Hoping that as this gets developed, there's going to be people that will come down here, live down here on the property. So, and I think that connector plan. And I guess I had one question. Wasn't there some machinations about the streets before? It's kind of the concept drawing, but weren't there there's a lot of thought and planning and these streets were finally decided to be laid out. Am I correct there?
Yeah, I mean, Jenny can probably speak to the history of the framework plan that set this up. Yeah, there's a lot of background even before I got involved in the project.
I know, Steve's read the framework plan and noted it in his initial comments. So this aligns with that vision.
I mean, the only other street alignment was to try to bring it off the bluff a little bit and put
Yes.
parcels on the other side. And it really just, it did not make a lot of sense. It looked like there was a few more parcels available,
Chopped it all up.
but it was less efficient than putting it against the bluff. And that was the only discussion on the road alignment other than that has changed at all. So, and this is not, what we're looking at is not, I hear what you're saying. The developers are gonna bring in, hey, this is what I wanna propose to bring here. I wanna have maybe shop on each corner of this building, but I wanna make it mainly residential. That's totally up to them. We'll listen to it. You guys will listen to it. We're quasi judicial here. So you're gonna both hear it. We're gonna have input. That's why I think this is vitally important and just to build a relationship too, because I mean, you guys you have a lot of authority over what planning and in the direction of the city as well, so.
One thing that as the planning goes on, getting people in and out of the town, I think really has to be addressed. At one point, I'm always thinking of almost all the important traffic comes down Columbia Boulevard. And use Old Portland Road, and that is kind of a side street as compared with pseudo Main Street. They kind of have my heavy traffic in one place. The locals can use the back road. And somehow, calm the words down, close off or Gable Road to Route 30, because that, as you know, is a real mess. But to tie Holton area with downtown St. Helens, really do fancy things with Columbia Boulevard. Use your utility trucks and other for the other roads. And which is totally different way. Right now we got two ways in and it's by guess or by golly. But we're talking about bringing people who don't live here in. Not the people who live here who know the alleys and all. So, this is no longer a town where we run logs and make timber. This is now a city that does other things. And I think we have to kind of step back and think of what do we want to do? Doing it the old way, we're not doing the old stuff anymore.
So I'm listening and processing and hearing what you're saying, and we've done that, and the planning commission has actually been part of that too, with the riverfront corridor, the gateway loop, and the connectivity and wayfinding, and we actually even on that intersection have talked, even going up further to Millard Road, where ODOT is still up at the top line in. We're working with the county as well in the alignment on Old Portland Road and Millard on Old Portland too, that alignment. I mean, so we're doing, you're right, there's a lot of issues wrong in this city. And we're plucking one problem at a time. This is huge. This is just a huge for everything. It helps enhance the whole city, in my opinion. And again, once we get development here, which also feeds our urban renewal, we have to understand that we're also feeding that through the development of this. The urban renewal is actually the gateway of getting it. So when we start feeding this, it perpetualizes into going up Old Portland, the gateway, out Highway 30. That's why we had every agency back us on 3 different phases of that urban renewal. because they liked everything that was proposed. All the taxing, school district, fire district, they all were on board. Not one opposed it.
These 2 blocks that you've created here, is the developer you're looking for, are they gonna be involved in those blocks also? Or is that separate from the?
Potentially, yeah.
So they're, okay, it's from City Hall basically on,
3 blocks here.
those 2 blocks, yeah.
We figure it's about almost 6 acres of public, complete, open public lands, which was part of the whole process. Clear back when Topaz was talking about it even changed, was that we keep a very good space for the public, or, access to our water. That's what's most important. It's huge. Park goes clear out to the end of that. Buildings stop. Jeremy, if you could point where that one way was that we're adding the parking there. What's your name, Jeremy?
Is that Keith?
Oh, Keith. That's Jeremy over there, sorry.
Same height.
So Keith, there's that gray block on this side of that little street right up there.
This area?
Yeah, you're close, right? That little gray block right there on the upper part is bare land. No, even over to the right. Yeah. Yeah, so that is actually where the Gracie's Annex building stopped, right there. That's not even it. That's the gravel beyond it. And the park goes clear to 12th in there. So it's a nice little, yes.
It's like something that follows your pattern nicely. And then you get to the veneer, the big open veneer site where, I hope it does continue that pattern down and then, it follows a curve, it does some things that are a little iteration on that.
And the urban trails, it ties perfectly into it, Jenny, doesn't it?
Yeah, we haven't talked much about the bluff trail, but I think that's a key feature in the base bid, and that's how people currently use the site today, is they walk, they go up to Nob Nature Park. And I'm really excited to see that feature built.
Is there any private property on that route right now?
Along the bluff trail?
Yeah.
It's city owned.
Yeah, that's city.
Any other questions that anybody feels like really needs to be asked? Because we're getting close to time and we have to tear down and get ready for the reading here soon.
I just want to make a comment that I'm elated with my feelings about what's going on here and now. And this started with 2 individuals 14 years ago. We found that Boise Veneer was selling their property. And in this room, we go, hey, what if? And all the what ifs come to fruition. And I can't think of anything better to go out off of the city council with all of this happening with what was going on 14 years ago and 10 years ago and 8 years ago and 6 years ago. And here you guys are now. I couldn't feel any better for being on this council. It's been a great ride. And
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge you, Def, because you have been doing this for a long time. I know you're not rerunning, and I want to thank you for your service.
I had more hair
16 years.
more hair on my head than I did when I started. Anyway, I just wanted to say that, and this room is full of brilliant minds and wonderful.
Thank you, Deb.
I probably won't have a chance to say that before I get ousted out of my.
You'll find a way.
Anyway.
We'll give you the chance.
So we are looking to do a boards and commission for all the commissions on April 28th is what we're shooting for. So you guys know, mark it on your calendar. We'll be at the community center, just very informal. Just let's talk and just no expectations for all our boards and commissions. So
What is that?
we used to do the appreciation dinner, remember?
For
So now that COVID restrictions are over, we're doing that again. So I just wanted to kind of make that announcement, talk about it.
So if I could share one call to reflection is that we were actively started this in 2014, going out to a national competition for the American Institute of Architects for the Sustainable Design Assessment Team, and many of you were part of that process. And a 3-day design charrette, they came a couple times, did some tours, came back, did all these renderings, and it's just amazing how the bluff trail, the road alignment, how much similarity there is from then to now. And over those 10 years, we've tested it, is it the right decision? Are we going to different sets of professionals? Yes, retesting, but the project values, the public access, preserving the cultural heritage, the sustainable desire for sustainable development, and private investment on the property have always been there, tested and retested, and it's always been there. It's really exciting, and this project is planning to bid later this year. That's pretty soon. So
Yeah.
That's exciting.
All right. Thank you, John. Thank you, guys.
yes.
Your turn to this out. Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta
Good job. Rounded all that on here.
We started on planning.
One reason I'm asking, or, Candace. So Candace growing on that lawn? And if you did, let's say before you break ground, can I get in there
It's all. That would.
Same level. And call this council regular session to order. It is March 16, time is 7 p.m. East Georgia. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll go ahead and open it up for visitor comments. If you have a comment, please come up and state your name for the record and keep it 5 minutes or less.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to address council. My name is Brenda Heron-Kaneda. I am a citizen of St. Helens, and I have a house down on 4th Street. And I am here specifically in regards to item number 4 on your agenda. Or pardon me, item number 3, it bounced between, I believe it was item 4 on your work session agenda. It's specifically what was referenced is the lock vacation of property. And I think the city is missing an opportunity by giving up its interest in this property. We talk about being family friendly. We obtained a grant for a sensitivity, sorry guys, I don't remember the exact phrase, but a special park for people with issues that may not have a place to go. We have worked hard on the riverfront development project. We have the Great Cliffs Park. We have the thank you, yes, Godfrey Park. There it is. And this would be a marvelous opportunity to create an overlook park that is not only a way to have rest periods, if you would, on your way down to the actual riverfront, but there's very little opportunity left to have an overview of the river or a viewpoint for it that's not down on the river or way up on the bluffs. Having something midway would definitely be good. I mean, I kayak. I've had opportunities to watch eagles and osprey feed their young, but I'm still looking up at them from the river. How much more fun would it be to watch the cormorants diving when you're almost eye level with them, as opposed to looking up at them or down at them, depending where one is located. Furthermore, the American Psychological Association has stated that from a stroll through City Park to a day spent hiking in the wilderness, exposure to nature has been linked to a host of benefits, including improved attention, lower stress, better mood, reduced risk of psychiatric disorders, and even upticks in empathy and cooperation. Most research so far has focused on green spaces such as parks and forests, and researchers are now also beginning to study the benefits of blue spaces, places with river and ocean views. And I think we have a real opportunity here. Let's take our easements that we have and use them for everyone and not just willy-nilly sign them over to other people. I want property owners to have their views. However, when I read the memorandum, it's an advantage for a few. It's not the advantage for the city. And I believe it would benefit the city to do so. Furthermore, according to the comprehensive plan, Chapter 19, Section 12, number 110, the public and semi-public land categories, goals, and policies. It specifically states under 1 goals subsection A to integrate public facilities with land use, transportation, recreation, and other community objectives and plans in order to realize their optimum value for the citizenry. And is the policy, section 2, is the policy of the city of St. Helens to A, cooperate with public and semi-public organizations to acquire and develop properties designated for public use as soon as funding is available. Well, we don't need funding, we already own it. B, follow the process to amend the comprehensive plan map as public and semi-public agencies designate which sites they propose to utilize for future development. We have an opportunity to go to the Planning Commission in the future and put our stamp on it and say, we know what we want with this easement. How wonderful it was to be able to purchase the Boise property. We own this. We don't have to spend more money. We just need to work with it. And further, in chapter 1912.120, open space category goals and policies, section 1, subsection A, is to conserve open space and protect natural and scenic resources. I realize there are houses there and they don't exactly grow like trees do, but being able to see our river. We know how important our beaches are from, the turn of the last century. Let's not turn our backs on an opportunity to do something for our city in this century. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I just want to make a comment on that. This is just an application, going through the vacation process, which allows any abutting property owner to try to vacate any city property. This is what was asked for, was a sign up. This is not by any, this is just to get signatures, 2/3 of the signatures to apply for a public hearing. This is by no means that we are adopting, if the council were to agree to sign, that we are saying that we're giving the land to.
May I ask a question, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, you may.
When I read the memorandum, it looks as if the city agreed to this, it could be used as a lever when approaching the planning department by saying, well, council's already okay with it, so just rubber stamp this for me. And I don't know that that's how it works. I'm usually at work, otherwise I would have been at the work session, so I apologize if I'm stating things that have already come up. But as such, I am concerned. It doesn't have, if you'll forgive the allusion, it's not a Caesar's wife here. It's looking not in the best to go to the people in charge first and then say, oh yeah, and then we'll talk to Planning Commission. I'm not saying that's what's going on at all. I'm saying it has the appearance of being out of work.
So you are familiar though with what, when I was talking then, it sounds like that you're familiar with what.
I'm hoping so. I'm not entirely certain.
It sounds like you're pretty well educated, actually. And if you have any questions, we have our city planner here who actually deals in municipal code and could probably answer it a little bit better, Dad. But I think I answered it probably right. I mean, it's 2/3. You apply for a vacation permit. It takes 2/3 of the property owners to actually even set off a hearing.
Yeah, so the ticket to the public hearing process, where the decision makers can formally determine whether or not right of way should be vacated, the ticket is providing that consent to the city. In this case, we're a property owner. So it is a little weird because of that. And that is the ticket to the circus, which will happen later on.
I hope it's not a circus, sir.
You're invited back to it though.
My own golden ticket. Thank you very much. So long as work permits, I would be happy to attend.
All right, thank you. Yes, appreciate you. Other visitor comments?
My name is Brady Freeland. So overall, I like the waterfront design plan. I think it looks nice. I hate your bollards. I find out that I'm actually green with Councilor Tilton's miracles may not cease to. People can't even drive out of the
The
beach.
sun come out.
I know. People can't even get out of the Bing's parking lot without running into their sign. And they can't get by the auto parts store without running into their sign. If you think they're gonna be able to drive down the street with bollards without running into them, I think you're out of your mind. They're gonna be crashing into that thing all the time. Plus, I don't think it's all that attractive, but frankly, I think the planning is wrong in general. The plaza needs to be closed, frankly. What needs to happen is the grass needs to go away because there's gonna be people here and all the time for Halloween Town. There's not gonna be grass that is ever gonna make it through 50,000 people, and it's gonna grow. And what needs to happen is the whole plaza, leave the trees. I don't like the plan. Leave the trees. It should be bricked. Be a fundraiser. You can sell bricks. The whole thing should be bricked. There should be no traffic going through where they want to have the bollards at all, frankly. And that to me is not planning for a few weeks. That's planning for 10 years from now. And when there's going to be 80,000 people here, and if you think you can get 80,000 people in the plaza, it's already too crowded if you've been here. So it should be closed, and I think the plan of doing the bollards is wrong. And I know there are businesses here, there's only 3 businesses that won't get parking right in front of their business, but they have parking within a block. And I hate to give up parking spaces too, but I do think that you need to plan to close the plaza and make it pedestrian only. There should be no cars going through there. And I think the bollards is a really, really bad idea. I do want to talk about your road council session meeting. It was really bad, again. So I just want to again remind you, it's like, I don't understand how that happens, how it's so miscommunicated about what you're voting on and whether you're voting on a budget or not. It's pretty clear you're voting on a job description. It is not a budget item. You should know that. You were on the budget committee. You should know what that process is and how it ran to, something that should have been a 2.5-minute conversation about a job description approval melts down into a 30-minute argument among the council is sad, and it makes me sad. And it is maybe more entertaining than listening to the Ukraine war channel, but it shouldn't be happening. And it happened without you reading the mantra, which I usually think is the trigger for your bad behavior, but it happened anyhow. I want to talk about the city being as the landowner for the vacation of the property next to Keith Lock. I don't think you should do it. Without you, they don't need you for it. They can get 2/3 of the people without you. And I think the city, being that you're going to make the decision, I think that you giving them permission is also giving them, it is, as the other woman said, it's sort of giving them a leg up. And I don't think that that's your job. You're going to be making the ultimate decision. Should it gets appealed to from a planning commission when it comes up with, then you giving that permission is sort of already making a decision. And I think that's not proper for you to do that. And, my concern is that I know they want to build a bunch of apartments and condos there. It's a beautiful part of our waterfront, and there is a historic, you're talking about all this whole afternoon about the historic view of our waterfront. My concern is that this is just the first step in making a gulag like they built in Scappoose. The Scappoose apartments that are next to the Candle look awful. They are an eyesore to that city. It was a mistake. I don't know how it got approved. I know that we need apartments, but to have that kind of a building here, and I don't know what the plan is. I don't know if we've seen that plan. I know it's premature. I'm just saying that I think this is your first opportunity to at least not put any undue influence in that process. And so I think that you should not agree to be a member of that. Thank you.
Okay, other visitor comments?
Tina Curry. I just forgot one comment from earlier. I wanted to let everybody know that I've met with Riley for the Rose Garden several times now. And it seems like that is moving along and that the county and the city are cooperating together to make that happen. And it might not be the original plan, but it would certainly, looks like it's gonna be an improvement. So I just wanted to let everybody know that that might actually happen by this summer, which would be amazing to have that cleaned up and looking fantastic. So the county is on it. Okay, yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, do we have anybody on? Ordinance, final reading. Ordinance to annex and designate the zone of certain property located southeast of the intersection of Pittsburgh Road and Meadowview Drive.
We adopt ordinance number 3281.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to approve ordinance 3281. Any discussion? Council President Morton.
Aye.
Councilor Topaz.
Aye.
Councilor Tilton.
Aye.
Councilor Berkeley.
Aye.
Aye as well. Consent agenda for approval, or no, excuse me, approve and authorize for signature. Sorry, it's been a long day. Number 2, contract with HASA Inc. for 0.5% sodium hydrochloride for the wastewater treatment plant. 3, consent to vacate public right of way on North 2nd Street. 4, dedication deed for right of way at 11503. 5, extension of agreement with Strategic Networks Group Inc. for broadband easement. And 6, agreement with Kittleson and Associates for St. Helens Street and First Street alternative analysis project.
I move we approve and or authorize for signature items 2 through 6 as read.
Give it a second.
Second.
Okay.
Discussion.
Yeah.
I knew it too. I could tell no one jumped on the second. There we go.
I think item 4 ought to be removed about the discussion of the vacation of second, 3 or 4, whichever one. it is. 3. And in order to do that, I think 2 through 6 ought to be rejected. Brady's comment that there might be a conflict of interest with us owning the property and having a say in final, I think that's a critical point.
I'd like to build on what Councilor Topaz says, and I guess like you, Jessica, I probably never thought I would, I shouldn't say. I too have had concerns, and I expressed them this morning, earlier this afternoon, and listening to Brenda and Brady. I would like to, can I amend the motion?
Well, no, because it's already been made and seconded, so.
Okay,
we'll have to-
so anyway,
Wrote it down and then.
yeah.
Yep. So what I'm hearing here is that we are going to go ahead and vote the proposed down, and then we'll go about it another way. I'll just state that when I vacated streets, I had some city property, I did not get consent, and I still was able to reach 2/3, which does allow the process to go forward. So
Items 2 through 6.
yep, so motion has been made and seconded to approve and authorize for signature 2 through 6. Council President Moore.
Aye.
Councilor Topaz.
Nay.
Councilor Tilton.
Nay.
Councilor Berkeley.
Nay.
And I will be a nay as well. Okay. So now we're gonna try this again without, I'm gonna go approve and authorize for signature 2, contract with HASA Inc. for 12.5% sodium hydrochloride for the wastewater treatment plant. 4, dedication deed of right of way at 115 Little Street. 5, extension of agreement with Strategic Network Groups Inc. for broadband easement. 6, agreement with Kittleson and Associates for St. Helens and First Street alternatives analysis project.
I move we approve and authorize for signature items 2, 4, 5, and 6 as read.
Second.
And motion's been made and seconded to approve 2, 4, 5, and 6. Council President Morton.
Aye.
Councilor Topaz.
Aye.
Councilor Chilton.
Aye.
Councilor Berkeley.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. There's no need to read 3 and deny it because it was already a part of the discussion. So I'm gonna move on to consent agenda for acceptance. 7, planning commission minutes dated effective February 8th, 2022.
Move we approve consent agenda for acceptance item 7 as read.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to approve consent agenda for acceptance 7. Council President Morton.
Aye.
Councilor Topaz.
Aye.
Councilor Chilton.
Aye.
Councilor Berkeley.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Consent agenda for approval. 8, council work session, special session, and regular session minutes dated March 2nd, 2022. 9 OLCC licenses and new job description for building maintenance utility worker 1 and 11 accounts payable bill list.
I move we approve consent agenda items 8, 9, 10, and 11.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to approve consent agenda 8 through 11. Any discussion? Hearing none. Council President Morton.
Aye.
Councilor Topaz.
Aye.
Councilor Chilton.
Aye.
Councilor Berkeley.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Let's see, I don't think we had anything kicked up from earlier. Oh. Okay, so we'll go ahead and go on to councilor reports. Council President Morton.
Oh, I would want to thank Councilor Berkeley showing up and testifying in our Parks Commission meeting about invasive species plants. And with that, that opened quite a discussion with others from Scappoose Bay watershed. And I think that was a very timely approach. I want to thank you for being there and testifying. Thank you. With that, I had a interesting discussion with the Parks Commission. And my report to them was I gave them some bad news, because if you recall from our last council meeting, I kind of stuck my neck out and said, you know, I don't think there should be any big projects, money allocated for parks with any capital improvement projects and any huge budgetary items. But there was one thing that there was one issue that I really stood for. And that wasn't our council meeting. It could have been on a retreat. I'm not certain. But one issue that I did stand for, and that's the urban trail. And I love the testimony today about going to vistas and seeing, being able to look at blue sky and river water go through the trees. The urban trail, as one more time, visits 6 different parks, goes through 6 parks, winds around some of the most beautiful vistas up on Wyatt Street and in that area, and all the way down to Nob Hill Nature Park. It's a 2-mile loop. It can be a half-mile loop. It can, especially with what we saw on the with the trail system that's on the riverfront. It can be just that loop. It can go so many ways and has so many options to it. But having the urban trail in place by this time next year is something that's going to be that I'm going to push and push and push, and it's not going to be very costly. It's going to take some kinds of things. So that was my good news. Well, the other thing that I did was they are looking at adding a parks commissioner, and I want to make certain that they went about it to not put us in a liable position. So in doing that, it was a good discussion, because I asked them to adopt the same standards that the council has adopted in interviewing department heads and interviewing people in that for any of our jobs. And that's to simply ask the same question to all the candidates. So that's what we do in our interviews. So you ask the same question to candidate 1 as you do candidate 2 and candidate 3, and they didn't know that. They were asking varied questions, and it could be looked at as favoritism. It could be looked at as in different ways, but it puts us in a liable, puts the council in a liable position, because we have to answer for that, as well as the Parks Commission. So I asked them to adopt those standards and get their questions to Kathy Payne, and Kathy would get back to them, and the staff is involved in some senses to make certain that there's stop gap makers that follow through. Anyway, that was pretty well received, but it took a while. And it was I felt good about doing that because there were a lot of people who really didn't know how to, that was a fair way to interview potential candidates for the Park Commission. Anyway, it was interesting, and
Councilor Capez.
A couple of things. Last meeting, I brought up the fact that on the mill property, there was on the tax map, only one taxable property, which they were paying $518 for year's taxes. And Councilor Berkeley brought up the fact that that wasn't correct, and he's right. Since then, I found total 4 maps. And there's one map that shows 11 tax properties, another one shows 12. The total taxes going back to the county again and again, they're paying about $18,000. So getting correct information, you probably got to hit it 3 times. And I thank Patrick for pointing out that the map I saw was wrong. And I got that from the county, so that was that part of it. They are building stuff on the property. They have permits that they paid for, but evidently there's a number of problems with fulfilling the correctness. That has to get looked at, and our Jacob lad is looking into that. The other thing that well, you know, the library search is going on. The other thing I would like to point out and make a public statement. I am bringing the council in front of the ethics board about part of the executive council meeting we had some weeks back, having to do with the toxic waste dump of the lagoon. And this is a purely mechanistic complaint. A lot of things were done correctly and a couple of things were not done. And so I've asked the ethics board, the council has been notified, the newspaper knows about it, but has not printed it out. So I just want to make sure that publicly we got the announcement out that the city council is being investigated by the ethics board.
I don't think we're being investigated yet.
Well, that may be, it's been filed.
And I'd like to make a public comment that you were also in attendance.
And that was
It
part
wasn't
of,
just us, it was.
and
you.
that was part of and that is part of the statement, yes.
Okay.
And the first one, it's the description is self-reported. And both times I've indicated that I was there.
And participating.
And participate, correct. Well, and it's a procedure that we're going after. And we were informed by our attorneys on some things, and that's where there seems to be a problem with procedure. That's what I'm checking.
So anything else to report?
No, that's it. I told you that I will be gone in part of June.
Yep.
I missed it, so that's good. That's it for me.
Good.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about some things that I've been up to. Recently, I went to the South Columbia County Elected Leadership Meeting with the mayor and Topaz actually too. They had some elected officials there from St. Helens, Scappoose, the county, the port, PUD, and we just discussed a lot of the county priorities, and I thought it was a really helpful meeting. A lot of the priorities are the same that we share with law enforcement needs, tourism, and just goals with street improvements and how to bring people to our county and make our county flow better together. So I thought it was a really helpful meeting to go to and learn about some of the updates happening in other cities around us and how that affects us as a county. And then I wanted to give a little kudos to the makerspace at the library. I have been bringing my 5-year-old there. We've went twice. My husband brought her there today, and actually in between meetings today, I seen her and we were talking about what she was doing there. She was very excited to tell me that she got to use a 3D pen.
Oh, yeah.
And she was just having a great time. She made some 4-leaf clovers to bring with her to a St. Patrick's Day party tomorrow, and she was just having a great time. And the staff there was amazing and just really open and welcome and just really cool things to check out. So I encourage people to go check it out and enjoy the staff and the knowledge that they have and willing to teach and share. And, yeah, so kudos to the library for that. Last weekend, I attended the St. Helens Sports Booster Auction. And that was my first time in attendance at that. And I got to see a lot of the schools and just what they're doing around raising money for sports in the community and how they are prioritizing sports and just putting money into, you know, the different programs and honoring some of the accomplishments that wrestling has been doing this year. Just really made some huge strides in their sports and taking care of the kiddos in town. And that was really, it was good to see so many people involved in that. And yeah, and then I wanted to just make it known that we continue to work on the budget. It's a, you know, if you're listening to any of these sessions, they get a little heated around the budget, but these are things that we continue to try to iron out, meeting with different parts of the department, being educated on the budget and how things work. And I feel confident that we're going to get to a good place of agreement. And I just want to make it known that everyone's priority on this council is to have more money and take care of all the problems. So sometimes, you know, it takes a little bit of finagling to figure out what priorities have to be met first. So if you hear us arguing about that, sometimes it's just, you know, a little pot of money and a lot of problems we're trying to fix. So but we're working on it and we're coming together and we're meeting together and we're listening to each other. And I think that's where we start. So that's what I got.
Thanks, Councilor Joe.
Hey,
That's perfect.
Patrick's Day.
Hey, full moon too.
Hey,
Yes.
and I do not wear green on St. Patrick's Day. I told my students today, I will not be wearing green. And if there's any pinching of myself or students, there will be consequences. But then I realized tomorrow, I was reminded that tomorrow is Spirit Day, sports day. Wear the colors of your favorite teams. So the Green Bay Packers and the Milwaukee Bucks, both green. So
You're wearing green?
I'm wearing green on St. Patrick's Day. Okay.
Not orange.
Off task. Okay, so yeah, Doug, I was glad to be able to speak at the Parks Commission, and the main reason I was there is that just to seek approval to move ahead with a solid cleanup out at Dalton Lake, April 23rd. So registration's live for that. Last Friday, I had an opportunity to talk with Eliza Gallagher, who works with housing for the 4 Northwest counties, and just learned a lot more about that. Her particular role is in education, especially working with landlords and all, and about housing issues, and perhaps looking forward to time to have her just introduce herself at a future meeting and talk a little bit about her work. A new tap room open, a new business open in the Holton district. So it's great to see continued development up there. And I wasn't able to attend the South County meeting because of the the Community Emergency Response Team training my wife and I are attending. First part of that, Sergeant Castilleja was there to talk about some things, and he always represents the city very well. He's a very popular guy, and rightfully so. But yeah, he represented well to talk about a number of emergency issues, and something that we just need to continue to keep in the forefront about our need to be on top of that. And Kathy just sent out reminders to all of us for our emergency management training. So this is some good stuff that needs to happen. Recreation program, continue to hear good things. 2 of my students are enrolled in the softball league, and they're always sharing with me about the things they're learning from their coach. So it's great to see how that's developing. And I enjoyed participating in that meeting yesterday with the Marine Board representatives about the possible developments on Gray Cliffs Park. There are just so many things, so many moving parts, and good things, so many good things going on. The last is Planning Commission met last week looking at a new subdivision that will be coming before City Council the next couple of months. Anyway, will be coming before us, so development over on the north side of town. And some very good discussions about that. Very impressed by some of the initial plans of the developers and the people planning in that in terms of working around our wetlands and natural environment. It's just really neat to hear developers who are not just there to build and make money, but build and contribute to the social capital of our community. I think 2 important things that came out of that, and Jennifer and Steve, you can tell me if I misspeak, but there's been some conversation at the last couple of council or the Planning Commission meetings, and there were 2 resolutions made at the end of the last meeting. One is that the Planning Commission resolved to be a proactive council or commission. Why do I keep mixing those? Anyway, a proactive commission. So that was a real desire to support the work of the City Council, the work of the city, to do in addition to participating in our joint sessions, perhaps taking advantage of some of the some opportunities that we have in our city code for the Planning Commission to work on. And as part of that, so as part of that, what they're looking at is at some point in time for forming some kind of sub group or subcommittee. It would not be a majority of the quorum of the Planning Commission members, but perhaps looking at doing a study, looking at a particular issue about something, and promoting and supporting the work of our employees, of our staff. So they, so they've voted to be more proactive. The details still going to be in discussion, but so that was done. And then the second resolution was to advocate with the City Council and the Budget Committee budget process about looking at hiring another planner, assistant, associate, what was the anyway, so another person on the planning staff to help with the work and with the work that needs to be done. And Steve and the Planning Commission made it very clear this was in no way a reflection on the great work that Christina, Jacob, and Jenny are already doing, but just at least keeping, if nothing else, keeping the needs to the forefront, that we continue to talk about this as we look at next year's budget and That was it? Okay, I'm done.
None of them.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, it was good being at the South County SWAT. Basically, what we do is a SWAT every couple of years, and then the staff continues to work on those goals that we've identified, the strengths, the weaknesses and areas, and they continue to meet. Is it bi-monthly or is it monthly, John?
Monthly.
Monthly. And they've done a lot of work already on since our last SWAT. So in that discussion there, though, is also talking about getting back to the city county dinners that we used to do with Commissioner Highmuller. He was hoping to have the old school available, and he talked about potentially, because it's not available and won't be for quite some time, and he is getting ready to retire, that maybe the county could utilize our community center to facilitate the city county dinner.
Not enough room. Yeah, there's only 49 people can be in there.
Only 49? So we'll have to, yes, it was just an idea, so I'll get together with him and we'll figure that out, but it's gonna start at the county, they're the driving force behind it, is what we kind of felt. So, yeah, good meeting yesterday with the from Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, talking about Great Cliff Park and just the beginning stages of looking at putting a kayak dock and a fishing dock, handicap accessible down there. And been working on that for probably about 3 months now in the beginning stages, maybe a little bit longer. And so quite a ways out because of permitting, but and government, but we got that going forward. Yeah, it was along those same lines was with our boating community, and we're really close to actually adopting some ordinances that'll give us some teeth to be able to police our waters, our waterways, our docks, and our waterways. Our city prosecutor Sam Erskine has done a wonderful job, really challenging us and asking us what do we want and what the committee, we're hoping to adopt something in about a month from now. Correct?
That's correct.
Yep.
Or have something for your adoption.
Yeah, for us to adopt. So yeah, it's been good to sit in on all that and just to open the dialogue with everybody, and there's gonna be some changes down there that some people aren't gonna like, but it allows us the ability to police our waterways. And things that happen down at that water that shouldn't happen if you're not familiar and you're thinking, and I know that it's gonna be probably a little bit of a public outcry when things finally start to get adopted and in place. But if you're not down here and you don't see it, then you haven't seen it, and you don't understand why we're going the route we're going. So it's a great committee. It's been going on for about 6 months now. And Topaz is part of that as well, and could speak a little bit on that, but we're in a good spot, right? Yeah, so yeah, other than that, just enjoy the weather out there. That's what I can say. Live, there's everything that's going on, just live, man. Be nice to one another. That's it. No reason. Other than one day at a time, and I keep it simple. And I hope that people don't feel a lot of pressure from what's going on in the world. I'm afraid that they're going to. And I hope that they know that they're welcome, wanted, and needed in any aspect. If you're needed here, I'm here. Because sometimes all you need is a friend with an ear. I don't know, I just want to put that out there because, with everything that's going on with the prescription pills and anxiety and depression, and it's just one of those things that mental health is how I'm able to function up here and serve you as a community. Just gonna take care of myself. Mental health. Right, I ain't gonna, I'm gonna reflect that on everybody else. So, do we get passionate up here? We absolutely do.
But we shake hands afterwards.
And we know,
talk, we know.
and we know that, it's actually good that's driving this. So,
You heard what happened at the federal level. The Republicans and Democrats finally got together, and guess what they passed? Something that's going to affect all of us. That time, we're gonna know on daylight savings time the whole way through.
I just want to thank staff for all you guys' effort, because you do, I'm not like, making this like a final speech, but you guys don't hear it enough. This is just something that, when we were sitting in here in our quasi judicial meeting, that the amount of work that has been put into the riverfront redevelopment alone. Not only on top of that, we have the industrial park, we have a little Great Cliffs Park we're working on dock ordinances. We're also keeping the maintenance going on the water sewer. We're also making sure that police needs are met. I mean,
Campbell.
yes, it just continues to go on and again, you're all instrumental in that. And just want to thank you guys. So you don't get enough credit. And you're the quiet voice of reason around here. And just want to say that. That's all I got.
What this really means is you're getting a 10% decrease in that. We're gonna pat you on the head.
No.